Let me ask you a question. Why do so many students have problems getting the IELTS score they need? Just think about it for a second. Well, the answer is normally because they aren't preparing correctly. So in this video, I'm going to show you some of the most common IELTS preparation mistakes. And if you fix these things, I can almost guarantee you that it will help to improve your score. But before we get started, if you want to learn everything you need to prepare properly for IELTS with clear lessons, a study plan, and examiner support along the way, you can join our IELTS Band 7 Plus Academy. The link is in the description below. All right, let's get started with the first mistake, which is studying without a plan. This is what most students do. They just study without a plan. But there are certain things you need to know to do well in the IELTS test. And if you just study randomly and watch random videos and read random websites on the internet, well, you're probably not going to learn everything that you need to learn. So let me give you some examples of things you need to know how to do well. The first thing is you need to know how to answer all question types. You never know what question type you're going to get in the IELTS test, and you don't want to be thinking about how to answer the question during the test because that's obviously going to waste your time and you don't have a lot of time. Now, this includes every part of the test. So listening, reading, writing, and speaking, you need to know how to answer all question types. The next thing you need to know is how each part of the test is scored. Now, I've got a little asterisk here because this is mainly relevant for writing and speaking, because in writing and speaking, there are 4 things that the examiner looks at or thinks about to decide your band score. And if you don't know what you need to do to get to a certain level, well, you might not get there because you're not doing those things. You need to know how to manage your time properly. This is particularly important in reading and writing, also in listening and speaking as well, but mainly in writing and reading. For example, in reading, you've got 60 minutes to do 40 questions. So you need to have a plan. You need to know how to manage your time. Writing, you need to write 2 different answers. Task 1 is 20 minutes and task 2 is 40 minutes. So you need to know how to manage your time properly to complete all tasks. You also need to know common mistakes that lower your score. A lot of students are doing things that lower their scores and they don't even know it. They don't even know that what they're doing is wrong. They don't know that what they're doing is lowering their score. So you need to know these things. And the best way to learn is to learn from an IELTS examiner. And finally, you need to know what Band 7 Plus answers really look like. Just knowing what you need to do to get Band 7 is not enough. You actually need to see what type of vocabulary is used, what type of grammar. Like for writing, how do all the paragraphs join together? How are sentences joined together? Okay, you need to learn these things. And if you don't know these things, well, you're probably not going to not going to get a high score. So these are just some examples of the things that you need to learn. And if you don't know them, you're not going to have the best chance of getting a high score. So if you do want to learn these things and more, make sure you join our Band 7 Plus IELTS Academy. The link is in the description. All right, let's move on to the second one now, which is focusing only on IELTS skills. Now, yes, it's true, you need to know all of the things I talked about in the previous section, but at the same time, you need to remember that IELTS is a test of your English level, okay? It's about how well you can use English. If you just focus on IELTS skills, you probably won't get the highest score possible. That means you also need to improve your general English. And when I say general English, I mean things like fluency, for example. So when it comes to fluency, this is regarding how smoothly you speak, whether you have pauses or not, whether you think for a long time, whether you hesitate. So this is one thing you need to focus on. You need to think about your vocabulary as well. You need to learn a wide range of words and phrases. And the important thing is they need to become automatic and natural. You also need to think about your grammar. Okay, firstly, you need to make sure your basic grammar is correct. So for example, subject verb agreement, plural singular nouns, how to make basic sentences. And then you can move on to learning higher level grammar. And finally, one of the most important things to improve your general English is your pronunciation. Learn the sounds of English. Okay, so learn your TH, learn your CH, learn how to pronounce all of these things. Not only that, think about your stress, intonation, and also common endings like just ED and S. But if your general English is poor, okay, there's going to be a lot of problems. Firstly, you're not going to be able to understand what you hear or read. And it doesn't matter how many strategies you know, if you don't understand what you hear and read, your listening and or reading score will be low. You won't be able to express your ideas. So for example, in the speaking test, in the writing test, you're not going to be able to explain yourself. And if you can't do that, again, you're probably going to get a low band score. Now, if your pronunciation is not very good, you won't be able to be understood easily. So let's pretend you're using fantastic vocabulary, fantastic grammar, but the examiner can't understand you. Well, that's obviously a big problem. So your speaking band score will be reduced, maybe quite a lot, because if the examiner can't understand what you're saying, or the examiner doesn't know you're using this amazing vocab, this amazing grammar. And finally, you're not going to be able to get the highest score possible. Remember, IELTS is a test of your general English, so you need to focus on that as well. So make sure you improve your general English. It's going to be very helpful for you, not only to get a better IELTS score, but also if you're going to use English in the future. All right, let's move to the third one, which is not knowing how the IELTS test is scored. Even if you're a native speaker, you may not get a band 9 in the IELTS test if you don't know what you need to do to score high. Now, obviously, there are 4 parts to the test: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And for each part, there are certain things you need to do. And there are also certain things you cannot do if you want to get a certain band score. Now, there's obviously lots of different things to know for each skill, but let me just quickly focus on one part: writing. So there are 4 things that the examiner looks at when deciding your score. So let me just quickly show you one of them, which is grammatical range and accuracy. Now, if you want a band 7 for your grammar, you can see some of the things that you need to do in yellow. Now, one of the most important things is you need to use a variety of complex structures. So that simply means you need to use some different grammar structures, and they need to be advanced grammar structures. They can't just be short sentences. Another thing you'll see is that it says error-free sentences are frequent. So this simply means that to get a band 7, you can still make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. That's no problem. And finally, it says, a few errors in grammar may persist. So this is just one example of one criterion at one band score. So you need to know all of this so you know what to do to score high. But if you don't, well, you might not score high. All right, let's move on to the next one now, which is not focusing on weak areas. Now, remember, IELTS is an average of your scores in 4 different skills. That means if one skill is not very good, it can hold you back from the band score you want. So let's pretend that these are your scores. Okay, listening 7, reading 7, writing 5.5, speaking 7. That means your overall will be a 6.5. Now, most of the time, the scores that are lowest are easiest to improve. So for example, if you want to go from a 5 to a 6, in writing, that's probably much easier than going from an 8 to a 9 in writing. So that's why you need to focus on your weak skills, because normally they will be the easiest to improve. And secondly, they're the ones that are holding back your score. So if you do have weaknesses, make sure you focus on them. Now, let me show you some common things that often hold students back. The first one is grammar. And when I say grammar, I'm mainly referring to errors and just using basic structures. When it comes to errors, a lot of students just make very basic mistakes, like not using a plural, not using your ed, not using the correct tense. Just little basic things like this that they probably already know, but maybe they just are not trying, or maybe they just forgot about it. I don't know, but they're just little things that can be easily fixed. Another thing is a lot of students just use very basic structures. Okay, so to get a band 7, like we saw before, you need to use some complex structures, some longer sentences. Another thing is just not using less common vocabulary. So for example, just using basic words all the time: good, bad, cheap, expensive. Well, remember, to get a band 7, you need to use some less common vocabulary. Another thing is pronunciation. Most students never focus on improving their pronunciation, and because of that, their pronunciation level just stays the same. And also, it just keeps their speaking at a certain level. A lot of the time, one of the biggest things that holds students back from a higher speaking score is pronunciation. Okay, so make sure you think about your pronunciation. Time management is another one. This is mainly relevant for reading and for writing. You know, you've only got 60 minutes to do 40 questions in reading, and then, 60 minutes to write your 2 tasks in writing. Okay, so you need to know how to manage your time, because if you don't finish everything, you're not going to get the highest score possible. Another one is just fluency. A lot of students have long pauses or hesitations where they just have to stop and think, or where they're translating from their language to English. And this obviously slows their speaking down, and it also makes their speaking not very natural. So these are just some of the common issues that I've seen in my time. So what you need to do is first identify or know your weak areas and then focus on them. This is probably going to give you the best results. Now let's move on to number 5, which is learning without practicing. So I've seen this a lot. Students just watch videos or do lessons on certain things, but they don't practice, or they don't do the thing itself. Just learning doesn't mean you can actually do that thing. Let me say that one more time. Just learning doesn't mean you can actually do that thing. It's just like if you read about how to ride a bicycle. Well, that's not going to be enough. You won't be able to ride a bicycle unless you actually practice and do it. And, watching a video doesn't help. It's the same with IELTS. So here are some things that you should be practicing. Number 1, writing introductions, bodies, and conclusions. Just knowing the structure is not enough. So for example, write a topic sentence, write a main idea. That's not enough just to know. You need to actually do it yourself. Answering speaking questions. A lot of students just read answers, but they don't actually answer themselves. When you go into the real speaking test, you're probably going to be nervous. You're probably going to be a bit worried, anxious. So you need to practice, because if you practice, you're going to be able to perform better than if you didn't practice at all and you just guess, or you don't really know how to answer. The next one is doing tests under real timed conditions. Again, this goes back to time management. If you can manage your time really well, well, you're going to be able to complete everything in time. And also that's going to be, or it's going to help you to be able to complete all of the questions and hopefully get the best band score possible. Another one is writing full answers. So just reading answers is not enough. You need to be able to write your own full answers. So for example, for writing task 1, you need to be able to look at the data, look at the chart, and then write your own answer, because there's a lot of things that you need to do to write an answer well. When it comes to task 1, you need to look at the chart. You need to think about your grouping. You need to think about your overview. You need to think about how or what order you're going to talk about the data in. Okay, there's so many things that you need to think about. And finally, the next one is answering different types of questions. In the IELTS test, you never know what question you're going to get, so you need to be ready for every type of question. And I'm not just talking about speaking. No, I'm talking about writing, listening, and reading as well. You need to know how to answer all of the different question types. For example, when it comes to writing task 2, there are 6 different question types, and you don't know which one you're going to get. Are you going to get an opinion question? Are you going to get an advantages question? Do you know how to handle all of those questions? When it comes to reading, same thing. Okay, there's lots of different question types: multiple choice, matching features, true or false, and not given. Okay, you need to know how to answer all types of questions. So these are just 5 things. Real improvement only happens when you learn and you practice together. So if you do want us to show you exactly how to prepare for IELTS, make sure you check out our IELTS Academy in the description below. And if you want to learn some common IELTS mistakes, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching. I really hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next lesson.